Here's my audience. Every night in the countryside of Ukraine, my distant relatives are forced to cover their gardens to protect them from falling radiation. On April 26, 1986, reactor number 4 melted down at the Chernobyl nuclear site. The first photograph is a picture of the nuclear reactor after the explosion. 2 people died immediately from this explosion, and many more people died later on. This has had a huge effect on the people of Ukraine, and even 30 years later, people are affected on a daily basis. It affected the environment, people and animals, and continues to affect the people of Ukraine, as well as people all over the world. First of all, we'll see how the disaster affected the environment. This disaster had a profound effect on the environment. One area that was affected was the red forest. The second plume of radiation from the explosion was carried over the forest. It killed almost 400 hectares of trees when radioactive particles settled. According to Will Flannery in an article for the Encyclopedia of Earth, the radioactive plume killed most of the Scots pines in the area, but birch and aspen trees, which are more radio-resistant, survived. Pine trees are being replaced as the forest recovers. Groundwaters were also affected by this disaster. When the red forest was torn down and buried, it leached radiation into the soil and was absorbed into the water around it. Longer-lived radioactive materials were absorbed to surface soils before they could transfer to the groundwaters. There were some obvious adverse effects in the exclusion zone and the red forest, but there were also some unexpected ecological effects. Currently, it is very stable, and the effect on flora and fauna in the highly radioactive restriction zone has been positive. This disaster didn't only affect the environment, however. It also greatly affected people and animals. In the little town of Pripyat, 49,000 residents were evacuated, but they weren't aware that it would be forever. According to Catherine Buell in a PBS article, citizens were given about $20 a month from the Ukrainian government to sustain themselves. Radiation also affected many people. 2 people died within hours of the explosion from non-radioactive causes, and 28 people died from severe radiation effects within 4 months of this disaster. 106 workers received high enough doses to cause acute radiation sickness. Nearly 7,000 cases of thyroid cancer in people under 18 have been recorded since this disaster, and there's also been an increase in leukemia and cataract. Wildlife had an unexpected result, as the wildlife in the area are now flourishing. This implies that humans have a worse effect on animals than this tragedy has. But it didn't only affect people at the time of the disaster. This meltdown continues to affect Ukraine and people all over the world. One place that is still affected is the elephant split, which is shown in the second picture. This is a solidified mass of waste, and after 30 seconds of exposure, dizziness and fatigue will find you a week later. 2 minutes of exposure, and your cells will soon begin to hemorrhage. 4 minutes, vomiting and diarrhea and fever. 300 seconds, and you'll have 2 days left to live. This is a statistic from Kyle Hill in a Nautilus article. Currently, if you are exposed for 1 hour, it will be enough to kill you. This just shows how deadly the waste from this disaster is. Over 335,000 people were evacuated from contaminated areas, and they've never found their way back to their homes. There's a temporary structure currently covering the disaster, which is referred to covering the reactor, which is referred to as the sarcophagus. Soon, this will need to be replaced, which is another way that this continues to affect us. There's very little data that shows us how radiation affects us, and officials are continually trying to downplay the horrific effects of this event. Chernobyl continues to affect the lives of Ukrainians and people all over the world. In conclusion, conclusion, the meltdown was an awful disaster. It affected the environment, people and animals, and continues to affect us every day. We must learn from this disaster. We must take it as an opportunity to gain data on how radiation affects us. And if we don't learn from it, it could easily happen again. But this time, the effects could be unstoppable.